I would try to give my best, and I'll try to finish as soon as
I
possible,
think
because
they
this
started
topic is
second
otherwise a very dry topic of a theory. I
second.
cannot show you any cases of transforming the faces from ugly to wonderful faces, but I'll try to make it as interactive as possible. So let me just start it. Good morning, all. Good morning, students. There is rightly said by Benjamin Franklin. It said, "Tell me and I forget, teach me and I may remember, and involve me and I learn." It means that only if I tell you, you might forget it, and if I teach you, you may remember, but you again forget it. But that's the reason I would like all of you to get involved in this webinar. I know the platform of webinar is little different than the presentation in front of the real crowd. Here, I'm facing a virtual crowd. I cannot see anybody. So I'm trying to give my best. Now, when it comes to the exam, all of you know that I will be speaking on something called
ನನ್ನ ನಂಬರ್ ಅಥವಾ ಇವ್ರ ನಂಬರ್ ಮೇಡಮ್
can I request moderator to mute the people who are not speaking here? I think I'm not able. Yeah, thank you. I would be talking on the outline of paper 2. The paper 2, when I say the paper 2 would be a paper 1 for a PG, that is MDS 2 part 2 for anybody. There are two course regulations. You know that MDS course regulation 2007 and MDS course regulation 2017. So under which you follow accordingly. A 2007 MDS course regulation would have a paper 2 as a paper 2, whereas in the MDS 2017 onwards would have a paper 2 as a paper 1 in MDS part 2. Now what happens, like generally this happens with the boys. I don't know, I'm not a gender specific, not a gender bias, but as a male, we used to do the same thing. Like whole year we used to roam around, and night before exams we were just trying to keep our eyes open, and during exam it was very tough, like whether the questions which is coming is a question which we have read or it is something else. And fortunately, I'm here. It all turned out to be the questions which we read about. There is a small video I would just play. See, this is what happens when most of the times you see the questions, and few of the questions you don't know. That would make you feel like this, and it would make you feel awful when especially a person sitting next to you know all the questions answers. Let's go back to the contents. Today I'll be introducing you to what exactly the paper 2 is, what is the purpose of MDS exam, examination pattern, MDS course regulation 2007-17, what is the mark distribution, what is the DCI syllabus, what is the weightage of this, previous question papers in various universities, and planning of studies. I would try to finish within 20 minutes. Why do we have an exam? As all of we know that exam is basically, we are in a professional course where if we don't have an exam, it's very difficult to, assess the person's ability to become a doctor, because you would be working on a patient. So we need to know whether you have an ability to apply your knowledge, whether you have an ability to cope up the exam stress, whether you have an ability to understand the questions, whether you have an ability to write in a given time, or whether you can argue a point of view, or your ability to criticize and analyze this thing. So that's the reason we need to have an exam. Even when the students have studied a course, sometimes they can fail to themselves justice in exam through, because you might have not prepared properly, and there are chances that there might be a poor exam technique. I would try to give you a few points to ponder, and I'll try to give you a few tips as well. What are the purpose of exam? As I told you that there are chances that after pursuing your part one or part two exams, you might pursue your career either as an academician, as a researcher, or as a clinical uh, orthodontist. So for everything, we need to check your research competency. You need to check your clinical competency. We need to check your reasoning and everything. So for that, there has to be an exam. uh, as you know, I already told you guys that examination consists of 4 papers, right? As in a part one, uh, only MDS part one you will have 1 exam, and in MDS part two you will have 3 exams, and those who are in MDS course delegation 2007 will have 4 exams altogether. Now, examination pattern as per the 2007, I told you, like each paper is of 75 marks. So total would be 300 marks, paper 1, 2, 3, 4. And paper 2 contains orthodontic history, diagnosis, treatment planning, and practice management in orthodontics. As per the 2017, it has been divided into part 1 and part 2. Part 1, basic science paper, part 2, paper 1, and paper 2 and paper 3. Each paper is of 100 marks. So in total, if you consider MDS part 1 and part 2 would be a 400 marks. So total weightage of theory exam is 400 in part 1 and part 2 altogether. Now part 2, paper 1 is the same as a paper 2 of 2007 regulation containing orthodontic history, diagnosis, treatment planning, and practice management in orthodontics. What is the mark distribution? As per the 2007 guidelines, the mark distribution are 2 long essays of 20 marks each, 5 short essays, that is 7 marks each. So total would be 75 marks. According to 2017 regulations, it is 2 long essays of 25 marks each and 5 short essay questions, which is 10 marks each. So in total would be 100 marks. Now syllabus, what is a syllabus? As you know, I'm talking about a paper 2 of a 2007 and paper 1 of part MDA 2017. So what is the syllabus given by a DCI, which is generally been followed by all the universities pan-India, right? The syllabus first is orthodontic history. You know the history or historical perspective, evolution of orthodontic appliances, pencil sketch history of orthodontic peers, history of orthodontics in India, the changing goals of orthodontic treatment, the development of modern orthodontics with the soft tissue paradigm. You know everything about historical perspective. I'll not go more in detail into this because I have to finish this within a specific time so that you can listen to some other esteemed speakers as well. We will not go into detail, but this is about the orthodontic history. So you might get a question from the orthodontic history. So you need to read about orthodontic history as well, because that is very important. Probably one of the full questions or one of the short essays would come from the orthodontic history. This is history of orthodontics. Uh, as you know, I'm just putting in some, images here just for the, like it evolved from the, if you can see this, it evolved from something before Christ to today. And now probably post-COVID, we might have a little different, like now COVID would be also added into the history of orthodontics as well a few years down the line. All of you know about Edward Hartley Engel, his malocclusions, his classes of malocclusions, his line of occlusions, how the Engel paradigm has been shifted to soft tissue paradigm. All of you know that this has been given into the Engel's book. What are the frequently asked questions in the orthodontic history sections? Appliances. What is the contribution of Edward Engel in orthodontics? Evolution of orthodontic appliances. Tweed Merrifield philosophy. Alexander principle. Evolution of contemporary orthodontics, and Engel's line of occlusion. There are chances that there are different questions other than this might come in your exams. These are the frequently asked questions been asked in different universities. So I'm just quoting it. You can take a screenshot of it. There is no problem. What are the concept occlusion and aesthetics that will be covered in paper 2? These are the structure and function of all anatomic components of occlusions, mechanics of articulation, recording of masticatory functions, diagnosis of occlusion dysfunction, TMJ and TMDs. What are the frequently asked questions from the same category? Pterygoid reflex, mini and microaesthetics, arch forms, development of occlusion and dentation, Andrews 6 keys of normal occlusion, attritional occlusion, TMD and its relation to orthodontic treatment. These are the more frequently asked questions from the category of occlusion and development of dentition. Now comes a most important section in this paper too, which has a very high weightage as well. That is etiology and classification of malocclusion. A comprehensive review of the local and systemic factors in the causation of malocclusion, various classifications of malocclusions. You can see this is basically an image taken from Profit. So there is a chapter of etiology of malocclusion. So basically it is divided into disturbance in the embryonic life, disturbance during fetal and perinatal period, then progressive deformities in childhood, something which is happening in the adolescent and early adult life, and disturbances of a dental development. Then there are genetic influences, then there are environmental influences, equilibrium consideration, masticatory functions, sucking and other habits, tongue thrusting, respiratory pattern, etiology and contemporary perspective. Causes of malocclusion. This is just to give an example. This is about the American society where 35% of a total population having a normal occlusion. 65% of population has one or the other form of malocclusion, and out of the 65%, only 5% malocclusions has known cause. Still, 60% are happening because of the unknown cause. So, a lot to be done in field of research malocclusion. Growth distribution disturbances in fetal and perinatal period. You know, these are the problems happening, like teratogens affecting dentofacial development. These are the all teratogens. Here you can see a Zika virus which has been added. So microcephaly and brain damage. This was the last edition in this. You know the classification. When classification comes, the gold standard is Ackermann and Profit classification with all its 5 characteristics. This is something which is very a new thing. Rather, this is something which you need to know about the problems in malocclusions. That is yaw, pitch, and roll. It has been discussed in a lot of webinars also as of now because of the surgical orthodontics as well as the developmental problem. So you need to know about the yaw, pitch, and roll, and you need to read the articles also on this. There are wonderful articles been given it. One of the frequently asked questions in this same topic would be heritability of malocclusions, indices in orthodontics, concepts of malocclusion, Davis modification of Rangel's classification of malocclusion, Katz premolar classification, Ackermann and Profit classification, etiology of malocclusion, specific causes of malocclusion, habits, non-nutritive habits, etiology and contemporary perspectives. Then comes the dental anomalies. Dentofacial anomalies are anatomical or physiological and pathological characteristics of a major group of developmental defect of orofacial structures. That includes a lot of things like cleft lip and palate and other deformities which is affecting the craniofacial structure. Another frequently asked question into this, we'll discuss the role of neural crest cells in the development of craniofacial anomalies. Briefly explain the diagnostic procedures involved in craniofacial anomalies. Secondary alveolar bone grafting, cleft lip and palate, disturbances in the fetal and perinatal periods. What is fetal alcoholic syndrome, hemifacial microsomia, Treacher-Collins syndrome, and mandibulofacial dysostosis? There could be other questions as well, but these are the frequently asked questions in the dentofacial anomaly section. This is also a very important topic which also has a very high weightage, that is diagnosis and treatment planning in orthodontics. When it comes to a diagnosis and treatment planning in orthodontics, no other book has given it better than Profit has given. I know that I'm a big fan and follower of Profit. I know people would say that, but I agree to it. So please read Profit, and you guys have enough time in lockdown, so please start reading it. Emphasis on the process of, see, Profit has given it in the, you have to have a questionnaire, then you collect the data. From the data you create the problem list, whether there is active problem, pathological problems, or there is a problem list. Then according to problem, you need to have a problem oriented approach. A problem which requires first intervention has to be done first way, second way, third way. Everything is given in a chart manner, right? This is from the chapter of Profit, which says a chief concern, questionnaire and interview, medical and dental history, physical growth evaluation, social and behavioral evaluation, then clinical evaluation, which includes oral health, jaw and occlusal functions, facial and dental appearance, diagnostic records, which diagnostic records are needed, analysis of diagnostic records, orthodontic classification, we have already discussed about it, development of problem list. This is very important. So it is interview, clinical examination. All of you must have read this. If not, then please refer to this. Create a database. From that, you create a problem list diagnosis that there is a pathology, some active lesions are there like caries or periodontal problem. Control it before you start the orthodontic treatment, right? Then there are the positive attributes you have to maintain during the treatment. Create an orthodontic problem list in priority order, and priority wise give a possible solution. Then you have a patient parent discussion, informed consent, and treatment plan would be. These are certain speech difficulties related to malocclusions. How to screen your TMJ, whether the patient is having a pain on both the TMJ, one TMJ, tenderness to palpation. Patient has a history of sound, whether on the one side or the other side, muscles. Everything is given. Deviation in the opening, whether it's the right side, left side, what is the maximum amount of opening, what is the right excursion, what is the left excursion, protrusion, everything. This is about the growth spurt. This is about checklist for facial dimension to evaluate during clinical examination. I'm not here to revise you any topic, just giving you a brief idea. You can take a screenshot of this. I don't have a problem with it. Again, how to take an interview, how to do clinical examination, and how to analyze your treatment records. What is a treatment planning in orthodontics? This is a chapter outline. Same thing, like major inputs, same representation of same chart which I've shown you is here. Now we have to make the orthodontic developmental problems in a priority order, and then you treat them priority wise. You have to do interaction compromising cost and benefits with the patient and parent. Treatment plan has been concepted, and then effectiveness and efficiency and final treatment plan will be planned. Please do read this, and if possible, if you can draw this schematic diagram, that would be great for examiner as well as for you. You know the paradigm shift of the extraction and non-extraction, debate of extraction and non-extraction. There are a lot of things which you need to read, so there are chances of having the questions from the same thing. What are the sequence of treatment of cleft palate patient? This is a short, brief idea I am giving you. We had a very good speaker, Dr. Puneet Batra, who spoke on the cleft lip and palate and would be speaking, I think, today again in some webinar. So he has given all the protocols as well. There are latest protocols, contemporary protocols to be followed in CLCP patients as well. So you can write those things also. Then you need to study about the child and adult psychology. That is Jean Piaget and Erik Erikson's theories, 8 ages of men. Then cognitive and socio psychological behavior pattern. What are the frequently asked questions in this topic would be a problem-oriented approach in orthodontics, natural head position, role of nasolabial angle in orthodontic, treatment planning, discuss the role of various radiography in orthodontic diagnosis, discuss in detail about diagnosis and treatment planning of facial asymmetry, current treatment methodologies of facial asymmetry, periodontal consideration in orthodontics, E-models, surgery first treatment planning. Now comes the cephalometrics. This is also very important when weightage of this paper 2 comes for the marks. Instrumentation, image processing, tracing and analysis, radiation hazard, advanced cephalometric techniques that includes digital cephalometry, then comprehensive review of literature, video imaging principles and applications. This is a cephalostate. These are certain analysis which are gold standard. Steiner's, Howard, McNamara, radiation hazards. This is just an example of Koch's analysis. There are endless analysis. Like whatever you require, you can just apply it. You can have a composite analysis as well. There's a nice book by Dr. Sunil Kapila on a simplicity in orthodontics. If you can read it as a reference book, it will be good for you guys. What are the frequently asked questions in cephalometrics? Are inadequacy of A and B angle, describe in detail about cephalometric evaluation of vertical growers. Steiner sticks, discuss cephalometric criteria for functional appliance therapy. Person soft tissue analysis, beta angle, point A revisited. Errors in cephalometrics, VTO, cephalometric norms in Indian population. Practice management in orthodontics. This would become very important henceforth post-COVID, because practice management would be the thing where sterilization of your practice would come. All of you know that our iOS has come up with certain guidelines. I would advise all the students to kindly go through those guidelines, which has been circulated with all of you, and it is available on the FB also. I would like to congratulate the head office under the able leadership of Dr. Silju Matthew, sir, for this becoming proactive and sharing it with the members. Thank you, sir. So practice management in orthodontics would become very important henceforth. So please read this, and I'm sure that this year you might get one questions about sterilization, especially because of this current situation and pandemic. There are certain things about this: economics and dynamics of solo and group practices, personal management, material management, public relation, professional relationships. Just a minute. We'll not go into details of it. Make a note on asepsis. The other questions asked in a paper 2 could be a child psychology, theories of growth, growth and development of maxilla and mandible, growth prediction, growth rotations, neural crest cells. These are the weightage of, this is very important slide. You can take a screenshot of this. These are the weightage of paper 2, diagnosis, diagnostic procedures, treatment planning at the highest weightage. Likewise, you can see cephalometrics, etiology, concept of occlusion, dentofacial enoma, orthodontic history, and practice management. How to prepare for your exam? You need to read, you need to read, you need to read. There is no other way. And now you have all the time to read properly. What to do during exam and all, I'll not go into detail of this. There are 10 tips. Give yourself enough time to study. Organize your study space. Use flowcharts and diagrams. Practice on your previous year's papers. Explain your answers to others. Organize study groups with friends. Now you can have webinars also. Take regular breaks. Snake on brain food. Plan your exam day. Drink plenty of water on the day of exam as well. Allocation of time. This is very important. You can take a screenshot of this slide as well. Paper 2 is of 75 marks, having 2 long questions of 20 marks each means 40 marks. Having short 7 questions of 5 marks each, that is 35 marks. So 180 divided into 90 minutes, 45 minutes for the long question, 45 minutes to these questions. So keep 5 minutes, so approximately 12 to 13 minutes for each short questions, and keep 5 minutes aside for your summaries and answers. Dear exam, please be nice. These are a few of the question papers which I posted. I can share this PPT, or I can share these things to organizers. Study while others are sleeping, work while others are loafing, prepare while others are playing, and dream while others are wishing. But please do read, please do study. All the best, my dear students. Stay safe and stay sound. Thank you.
So the basics of orthodontics is my topic, that is paper 1. And good afternoon, everybody. I hope everybody is fit and fine in this lockdown period, and students are preparing for their exams. So the topic is basics, which is the foundation of the orthodontics. So the basic are very, very important. This is a very, very important topic. And in this presentation, I would be focusing on the frequently asked questions regarding the paper 1, and what should be our strategy to get maximum marks while answering these questions. Now, exam preparation is not a single day job. You have to prepare it right from the beginning. So you have to plan a very, your strategy should be there, definite strategy should be there how to prepare for these exams. And you have to execute that plan with determination and with positive attitude. And I will also be speaking on mark distribution for paper 1 and methods of attempting questions to get the maximum benefit from this. So first and the foremost step for exam preparation is knowing the DCI syllabus, because many a time there are no choices given, so you have to be thorough with your DCI syllabus. And second step would be to have a look on frequently asked questions. Now the question must be arising in your mind, when we have to study whole syllabus, why should we look at the frequently asked questions? The answer to this is a rule of 80-20, because 80% of the questions are asked from the previous papers. So you should be well prepared, and you would save much of time while answering these 80% of questions. And that time you can utilize for 20% of questions which are a little tricky questions and which may require thinking, pondering, and then writing. So you may require a little extra time for those 20% of questions. So this is very much required to look at the previously asked questions. Then you should also know which books to be referred for this paper 1. Now the important books for paper 1 is the important topic is growth and development. So Essentials of Growth by Enloe. Then textbook on growth and development by Sridhar Prem Kumar. Then Graeber Wennesdal, Weak Profit. Wheeler's Anatomy is also important. Orthodontic Materials by Brentley. Textbook of Community Medicine by Park. And TM Joint and Disorders by Occasion. So these are the important books. Apart from these books, you have to refer to other books also, because whenever you are studying any topic, you have to look into various other books as well and make or prepare your notes. Now, strategic study plan. It is essential for coordinated and well-organized activities. You have to manage your time as you manage your money, because time is money for you. In such a short duration of time, you have to study so many things, so many articles, so many books. So you have to save your time. And how can you save your time? By group studies, group discussion, and there are various other methods. So we have to manage our time. And these coordinated, well organized activities, they need 5 Ds. You have to dedicate yourselves to studies, devote your time to studies, and you have to be determined. Self determination is must, and discipline is must. Self discipline is must. And you have to set small goals. You have to set deadlines for every goal you have to achieve. So you have to set these goals, and you have to achieve these goals so that you can succeed and come out with flying colors. Then you have to be consistent in execution. It is not like that 1 month you go in this pattern and again you forget everything. So you have to be consistent, and that requires a lot of determination and discipline. You have to work with positive attitude. There may be some negative people around you. You have to ignore them, and you have to seek consistent guidance from your guide and other teachers. This is the way you can study well. Now, there are common queries in the student's mind, that how are these PG exams are different from UG exams, and on what basis marks are awarded. So in undergraduate studying, the knowledge is superficial, but in PGs, you have to have a in-depth knowledge, and you have also to mention the source of information as per the author, year, and the journal. Then the flow charts and the diagrams are the requirement, as has already been said in the previous lecture. So to impress upon teachers and examiners, you can make maximum use of these charts and diagrams. And underline important points. You can underline these important points and then write the important points in capital letter so that you highlight those points. Answer in headings and subheadings, because writing important points before starting actual answer gives an idea to the examiner as to what follows next in the answer. So that is the correct method. Then use accurate definitions. Attempting the theory question. Answer to the point, neat and legible handwriting. Don't ignore your handwriting. It should be very, should be readable to the examiner. Sometimes in a hurry, when we want to write so many things in the paper, we forget about looking, you don't care about handwriting. So handwriting should be very, very clear so that it is readable to the examiner, and provide all the necessary and relevant information being asked. You have to read the paper correctly. You have to spare 5 minutes initially, and then provide all the necessary and relevant information, and prioritize your attempt. So marks division, there may be long questions, there may be short questions. So if there are 2 long questions, then there are 7 short questions. So 2 long questions, they carry 20 marks each, and short question 35 marks. 7 short questions carrying 5 marks each. Attempt long questions first, preferably, because they are of more marks. Then mention the question number correctly before attempting the question. Excuse me. Now time division. 180 minutes means 3 hours. So you have to divide this into long questions and short questions. So each long question should not be more than 45 minutes and 15 minutes for each short note. Now you should have the idea of previous papers, which guides you how the paper is formulated. And knowing this DCI syllabus is must. So this is, if we look at the DCI syllabus for this paper, we find that there are 5-6 major topics to be covered. That is the growth and development, applied physiology, pharmacology, anatomy, and genetics, biostatistics, dental materials, and occlusion and TMJ. Now, which are the frequently related asked questions related to these topics? Growth and development. The long questions, usually the most important is the growth and development of the mandible. So maxilla and mandible, this is the area where you would be addressing the problem while treating the patients. So this is very, very important. Then the various methods of growth prediction, because to modulate growth, you need to know how much growth has occurred and how much is more remaining. So various methods of growth prediction and importance, this has an importance in diagnosis and treatment planning. Then mandibular growth rotations are very important. So these mandibular growth rotations are reflection of the differential growth between the anterior face height and the posterior face height. And the growth pattern, because the treatment planning or treatment mechanics, they are dependent on the growth pattern of an individual. So this is very important from treatment for treatment, effective treatment. Then mandibular growth, the next is the theories of growth. Theories of growth, TMJ, its development, anatomy, function, and disorders. Now, frequently asked short questions on growth and development is, synchondrosis and sutures, because synchondrosis and suture, if they are close, they indicate that the growth is complete. So you have to know which synchondrosis, which sutures they close at what time. So that helps in proper treatment planning. Then cephalocaudal gradient of growth, functional matrix theory, development of branchial arches. Age changes in mandible is very, very important from forensic point of view. You should know how does the mandible look like in young individuals, and how is it different from adult individuals. And also you should know the gender differences between for this mandible. Then soft tissue changes in face during growth. How soft tissue grows. This is very, very important, because you are treating patient at much younger age, and how his face or her face will grow is very, very important. Because if you extract and retract lips too far behind, and the nose and chin, they keep on growing, especially in males, so you may end up in concave profile. So this is very, very important with what all soft tissue changes occur with time. Then muscles of mastication, velopharyngeal mechanism is important. How the oral cavity and nasal cavity are separated during different functions, and what happens if they do not. Then danger area of face, how it can lead to cavernous sinus thrombosis is very, very important. This is the short note question. Then safety valve mechanism, how it allows the intercanine, maxillary intercanine distance, allows the mandible to grow. Then buccinator mechanism, which is important, the outside muscles, the inside muscles, how they help in shaping the arch and teeth positions. So this is very, very important, and this is the very basics in orthodontics. Then the questions from applied physiology. The long questions are malnutrition and orthodontic tooth movement, role of drug in orthodontic tooth movement, physiology of orthodontic pain, EMJ disorders and orthodontic treatment, details of biology of orthodontic tooth movement. So basically tooth movement is very, very important. Then vitamin D, its role in orthodontic tooth movement is very important for, and this is a for short question. Syncope, OPG and Rankel system, orthodontic scars, what are the side effects of orthodontic treatment, one must know. Then anodontia, supernumerary teeth, and systemic diseases. Dental material, long questions. Recent advances in dental materials. Types of orthodontic arch wires, materials used in direct and indirect bonding. Short questions, Washington effect, how the spring should be made, how we can get maximum benefit by rightly fabricating the springs and the coils. Tie-tie wires are very important apart from stainless steel wires. Then load deflection rate, which wires have low load deflection rate, which wires have high load deflection rate, because this is very important where to use, how we can make use of this load deflection rate in different wires. Then aesthetic label wires, biodegradation is also important, and nickel allergy, latex allergy, these are the important short questions. Biocompatibility of orthodontic arch wires. Now from genetic chapter, the role of genetics in orthodontics is important. Inheritance pattern of class 3 malocclusion, role of genes in tooth development and agenesis, genetic disorders, its basis for malocclusion and craniofacial disorders. Now short questions from genetics, influence of hereditary on malocclusion, homeobox gene therapy, especially OPG and Rankel gene therapy, twin studies and familial studies, role of genetics in external apical resorption. Now biostatistics is very, very important topic, but often students, they neglect. They think that this is a topic which a statistician should know. Why should we know about biostatistics? But it is not like that. your statistician does not know about orthodontics, and if you do not know about statistics, how the coordination will occur between statistician and ourselves. So it is you have to decide which analysis are to be done. And normally what happens, the biostatistician, they apply minimal biostatistical or statistical analysis. So we have to suggest if there is any requirement of advanced statistical test or not. And secondly, sample size selection is also very important. So that we have to take all these considerations, how to reduce bias. Otherwise, whole of your study goes in vain. So it jeopardizes your research and the thesis work. So it won't be. I mean, you won't be able to get it published if your study procedure or your research is not up to date. So these are the important things you have to know. And the questions are asked about the various levels of evidence. Indices in orthodontics is also important. Then randomized and how to conduct it properly, which are the guidelines. This is very important. Then there are certain tests, the commonly test like chi-square test, ANOVA test, Pearson correlation test. So these are the important tests. So you should know about this. The questions are asked about these important tests. Then evidence-based orthodontics, that is systematic reviews and meta-analysis. So you should know how to conduct systematic reviews and how to conduct meta-analysis. This is very important. So in all, the teamwork is required, and you can form team with your colleagues. Execution of activities is not possible by a single person. So there has to be team and there has to be a divided effort. And of course, in between, you can take small break to rejuvenate yourself, and that way you can come out with flying colors. At last, I would just like to mention that believe in smart working, that is specific, measurable, adjustable, realistic, and time bound. So you have to balance all these aspects to come out with flying colors. All the best for your exams.
Thank you, Professor Sandhya ma'am, for a very good presentation. Now I would like to invite our next speaker, Dr. Sridhar Prem Kumar. Sridhar Prem Kumar is Professor, Head of Department of GDC, Tamil Nadu. He is very famous for his publication, and at the same time, he is very famous for his art of speaking. The way he speaks, it's very impressive. And he will be talking about paper 3 and paper 4, and at the same time he will conclude the session also regarding in terms of writing paper. So over to you, sir. I would like to invite Sridhar Prem Kumar sir to the screen. Please share your screen with all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ashish. Is the video screen, PowerPoint screen? Is it visible?
Yes, sir, it is visible. Please go on presentation mode, please.
Yes. I am actually surprised to see 908 participants, because I think this program is orthodontically scheduled to be for part 3 or third year MBA students. I don't know, really India has got 900 students who are appearing for part 3 exams, I'm not sure. Whatever it is. Anyhow, let me start this presentation. And
it's because of your charm, sir.
I hope so. Right. So this is the topic heading which has been given by Dr. Ashish Garg to speak on the outline of theory papers, weightage, question distribution, and how to attend paper 3 and paper 4 and conclusion. To be frank, I'm not going to speak anything about this, because I'm not going to give you the outline of theory papers. I'm not going to give you the weightage. I'm not going to give you the question distribution. Probably I will tell you how to attend paper 3 and 4. and a little bit of confusion, because if I'm going to tell you this is what is your outline and this is what is the weightage, if something else comes from what I have not told, then tomorrow you will blame me saying that Raj said you will not, this is most important thing, this is not there. So let me not go into that. And
Sir, please share the screen.
Your desktop is visible. Your desktop is visible, sir.
is it seen now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Right. So the tips are certainly given with a substantial seasoning of humility. The thoughts and tips in this presentation are of varying usefulness and may exclude others of equal or greater merit. Okay. So how I studied for my PG and how I tell my postgraduates, this is what I'm going to speak now. Right. Knowledge is one thing, but expression is as important as it. When you're studying for your post-graduation, you know, you are tested on different skills. The skills will be like, hello. The skills will be your cognitive skill and psychomotor skill. The psychomotor skills will be assessed in your practical examination, where you are asked to do your work, whereas your cognitive theory is tested, or your cognitive skill is tested by means of your theory exam as well as your viva work. Your theory exam tests the writing skill and the ability to reproduce in a specific time. And of course, your viva tests your presence of mind. Your viva does not mean you know everything. It's more about the presence of mind, how you deal with the situation. I would like to start this presentation with this quote given by Leonardo da Vinci. He who loves practice without theory is like the sailor who boards ships without a rudder and compass and never knows where he may cast. Whether it is your practical exams, whether it is your viva, whatever it is, what is the basis? The basis for everything is your theory. If you are good in theory, you will be a good clinician. If you are good in theory, you will be a good researcher. If you are good in theory, you can develop your practical skills. So theoretical knowledge is the fundamental of a postgraduate student. Right. So now I will divide this segment into three parts. What are you supposed to do before the examination, during the examination, and after the examination? Now, before the examination is very important because, you know, Albert Einstein, when he went for a meeting, he was asked to explain in a simple way what is theory of relativity. So he said, if I'm going to give a hot plate and ask one boy to hold it for 10 seconds, the 10 seconds will look like almost 1 hour. But if I'm going to ask the same boy to speak to a beautiful girl for 1 hour, probably the 1 hour will look like 10 seconds for him. So that is relativity. So the point is, if you need to master the subject, nobody can master the subject. If you need to know more in the subject, you need to study. And you need to take interest in the examination. It's more a question of relativity. So before the examination, how to study? Now this is a question most of the students ask, sir, how to study? How did you study your 10th exam? See, all of you are appearing for MDS examination. You have cleared your 10th board examination. You have cleared your 12th board examination. And after your 12th examination, probably many of you would have written the NEET examination and joined the BDS course. You finish your BDS final year where you had to write 8 papers. And after that, you struggled so much to clear the NEET examination, you joined the MDS. Did anybody teach you how to study all those things? So I'm not going to tell you how to study for MDS. You just have to study, that's it. How you studied for your plus 2, how you studied for your BDS, same way you study, that's it. When to study? This is very important. When to study? You study whenever you get time or whenever you get bored. When I joined BDS, I had a friend who used to study anatomy when he was getting bored. Now, I used to study actually dental medicine when I used to get bored. So when to study? You have to study lifelong because you're going to become an orthodontist and you have to study continuously. There is no question of when to study. Whenever you feel like studying or not feel like studying, whenever you get the opportunity to study, you have to study. What to study? So this is another question students will come and ask. Sir, what to study, sir? What to study, sir? What to study? The answer is very simple. You have to study orthodontics. You have joined MBS orthodontics. You have to study only orthodontics. So how to study? You know how to study. When to study? Whenever you get an opportunity to study, study. And what to study? Now, when to study? This is important. And now the trend is like students. Now I will give you a small. Usually students from where to study. No, usually when we ask the question to a student, immediately they'll go back to the Google or the Google God and search for it. So there is a difference between how we people learned. I think Girish will agree with me. So there is a difference in knowledge-based learning and information-based learning. We were studying in a time where the information available to us was less. And I remember I traveled all the way from Chennai to Mangalore, Chennai to Davangere to collect articles. So we studied because we searched for articles. So from where to study, you need to study only from textbooks and articles. Don't rely on all this, what you have, this slide share, all these things. Because if you're going to rely on slide share, you're narrowing down your searching. You can, if you want, probably once you do a complete research and then see if you're missing any points, and then you can go and search for that. Straight away, if you're going into a research or into a slide share, it's like using a borrowed brain. You're not using your brain. So from where to study? From textbooks and of course, standard articles. On articles, when I say articles, published standard journals where it is peer reviewed. So from where to study? It's only from two sources, books and your journals published, peer reviewed, articles published in peer reviewed journals. Now, if you look at all these things, what is common in all these things? Study. So what is required now is study. So if you're studying, you cannot appear for exams, and keep studying. So that is what is important. Now I hope you see this on the side where it's like, hey Google, why don't you sit next to me during my exam? So if you're going to rely, for example, if you are Google God to search for all things, this is what will happen at the time of exams. So don't rely on Google, or you can rely on Google to get the study materials, but don't rely on your slide share or where it is readily available. So your learning should be knowledge-based, not information-based. And most importantly, love orthodontics and love or admire your teacher. Because I developed more interest in orthodontics because I love my teacher, Dr. Rangachari. In fact, when he used to ask questions, if I don't know the answer, I will feel insulted. Now the tendency of the students is like, no, you go to a teacher who doesn't ask questions. Students like teachers who don't ask questions. No, daily for the past 2 days, Dr. Girish has been conducting question answer session. Now, what is the whole idea of conducting this question answer session? The whole idea of conducting this question answer session is for you to learn. How are you learning? You are learning by asking questions. Another important way by which a postgraduate student learns when you are asking. So you expect the teachers to ask questions. You have to like a teacher who actually asks questions. So love orthodontics and love or admire your teacher. Even if you don't love your teacher, you can imagine somebody as your teacher and start loving him or admiring him and start developing your liking or loving towards orthodontics. Right. So with this, when you start studying, first you need to understand the purpose of the examination, understand the examination pattern, plan your study, develop a plan action for the examination, prepare templates for the answers of questions, and most importantly, sleep well and eat well before your examination. Now, what is there in understanding the purpose of the examination? You know, you have your Part 1 MBA students here and Part 1 MBA students. Why is there a Part 1 examination? The Part 1 examination, the purpose of the Part 1 examination is to determine your fitness to progress to Part 2. So that's why you have a Part 1 examination. Unfortunately, now the Part 1 and Part 2 is mixed, I think, from the first year, now we have separate examination, which is the correct one. So the purpose of MDS Part 1 examination is to determine fitness to progress to Part 2. And the purpose of Part 2 examination is to fitness to be a competent orthodontic specialist and also to be a teacher. So when you pass out, you should know more. I always tell the postgraduate, as a postgraduate student, theoretically, you should know more than your teacher, because teachers don't have time to study. You have all the 3 years to study. Theoretically, you should know more than your teachers. Probably your practical skills or application of the theoretical knowledge you may not know, but theoretical basis should be strong at the time of writing examinations, and theoretically, you should know more than your examiners or more than your teachers. Now, understand the examination pattern. I think the examination pattern, Dental Council of India itself states, I'm not going to explain about that. And also different universities have different examination patterns. So you can go through that. And this is the syllabus given by the Dental Council of India for Part 3 and Part 4. So much to study: myofunctional, dentofacial, orthopedics, cleft lip, and the whole of cleft lip, biology of tooth movement, orthodontic, orthognathic surgery, ortho, perio, prosto, endo relationship. Ouch. There is so much to study. You have so much to study in your paper 3 and paper 4. Right. This includes all this also. Now, a word of caution, because what I'm going to say now is not my thing. It's given in Dental Council of India website. The topics assigned to the different papers are generally evaluated on those sections. However, a strict evaluation of the subject may not be possible, and some overlapping of topics is inevitable. Students should be prepared to answer overlapping topics, which means you cannot complain that this is not a paper 3 paper, this is paper 2, why am I getting in paper 3? There will be a chance that there will be overlapping. You should be prepared for that. And this is what usually is the paper. Paper 2 shall consist of, when I say paper 2, it's actually paper 3, because now the present thing is paper 2. If you're writing your exams, Part 1 exam in the first year itself. So paper 2 and the paper syllabus given by the Dental Council of India. Now, let us go into the most important aspect: plan your study. Now, use the information regarding examination pattern to study, cover the entire syllabus before the revision holidays. Normally, we have this tendency of studying during the revision holidays. Revision holidays is for revision. It's not for studying something new. Ideally, when you are given revision holidays, you should have studied everything. And do not leave large portions for reading at the last minute, especially since questions may be asked from any part of the syllabus. Spend more time on topics that are more valuable, which carry more marks, repeatedly asked instead of going the number of pages for the topic in a book. And develop a plan of action for the examination preparation. I would like to concentrate more on this particular aspect, and the whole syllabus, what is there in paper 3 and paper 4, I have condensed into 24 templates. So if you people can take a screenshot of all these 24 templates, it becomes easy for you to appear for your exams. But again, a word of caution. This template is a template which will not be useful if you do not know the subject, if you do not know the contents of the template. So this is only like a kind of skeletal framework. So you need to be thorough with the subject, only then your template will be useful. So let us go into the first template. Myofunctional orthodontics basics. We had so much of discussion about myofunctional orthodontics first day itself. When a question is about myofunctional orthodontics, if you have prepared a template like this: introduction, definitions, history, principle of functional appliance. What is the basic principle of a functional appliance? The basic principle of a functional appliance is, when you are giving a functional appliance, you are introducing a new pattern of function. So to the new pattern of function, the new morphology develops. This is the basic principle of functional appliance. Unlike your fixed appliances where you alter the morphology and wait for the function to adapt to it. So when you are giving a functional appliance, basically what you are doing is you alter the function. The functional alteration can be in your lips, can be in your teeth, can be in your whole stomatognathing system. To the altered function, a new morphological pattern develops. That's why the stability of patients treated with a functional appliance is usually better when compared to patients treated with a fixed appliance. And of course, your changes observed and the mechanism of action, timing of treatment you need to write, philosophy of individual appliances, namely activator, bionator, functional regulator, pin block, and of course, the controversies regarding the functional appliances, which again, On the first day, I think I showed 3 slides where the controversies or the important key articles are regarding the controversies were given. So any question on myofunctional orthodontics basics, this is the template. If you know this template, you can easily write your exams. If your myofunctional appliance, clinical aspects are asked. Clinical aspects of your myofunctional appliances. This will be like a repetition, choice of patient, clinical assessment, cephalometric plus CVMI, panoramic, hand disc X-rays. I believe there was a question on the first day when somebody asked, should we take a hand disc radiograph or should we rely only on CVMI? CVMI now is taken because you don't need an additional radiograph, but there's nothing wrong in taking a hand disc radiograph because even now, hand disc radiographs are considered the standard in assessing the physical growth of an individual. So CVMI, since we are not taking an extra radiograph, we are going with that choice of appliances, which, when and why. There is a beautiful article in old Australian Journal of Orthodontics. The article itself is titled as Functional Appliances, which, when and why, which describes about the choice of appliance for each appliances, choice and recording of construction bite for different functional appliances, and then you will have to elaborate about your stepwise versus larger advancement. So which is better? Now the concept they say stepwise advancement is usually preferable when compared to a larger advancement. Components of construction bite for different functional appliances. Again, I'm not describing the functional appliances individually because all the 4 important functional appliances we have already seen in the previous template. So if with this, you are covering your functional appliance. The next is the dentofacial orthopedics. I'm going with the syllabus pattern as given by the Dental Council of India. So when a question or what you should know in dentofacial orthopedics, again, introduction, definitions, and history. When a question is asked about dentofacial orthopedics, you have to differentiate between extraoral force and orthopedic force. So there is a beautiful definition of orthopedic force, which is given by Dr. Lowe. So definition of extraoral force and definition of your orthopedic force, and then history. Many of you will think that it was Kingsley who actually introduced the extraoral force. No, it was actually Gunnell, long before, as early as 1822, who introduced the headgear. Kingsley actually reintroduced and popularized it. So introduction, definition. And what is the purpose of extraoral force? The purpose of extraoral force can be broadly summarized in 4 headings. Number 1, first is the restriction of the growth, extra growth of the maxillary complex, or trying to contain the increased growth of the maxillary complex. Second is your stimulation of the deficient maxillary growth. Third, again, containment of the mandibular growth. And fourth is your to counteract the side effects of your fixed appliance, or you can say it as an anchorage purpose. So broadly, the purpose of extraoral force or the purpose of dentofacial orthopedics can be 4. Number 1, to control the growth of the maxillary complex, to stimulate the growth of the maxillary complex or to bring it forward, and to control the growth of the mandible. Again, and last will be your anchorage or to negate the side effects of the other appliances what you use. So when you use this, again, it becomes easy for you to write about the application and how are you going to change the growth pattern of the dentomaxillary complex or the growth control of the you're going to here. And of course, for headgears, you should know the component types. I don't know how many of you know what is the basis, why it is called you have 3 different types, no, long, short, and medium pull. It is basically because depending upon the length of the outer bow is compared to the inner bow. If the outer bow length is smaller than the inner bow, it's called a short outer bow. If they are almost equal, it is called medium. Or if it is greater than the inner face bow, it is called a long one. So component types and biomechanics. Again, biomechanics, when you're giving a high pull headgear, when you're giving a combi pull headgear, when you're giving a low pull or a cervical pull, depending upon the problem what you have to choose the biomechanics and the force direction also. So now coming to the face mask, which is used to protect the maxilla. Again, component type, biomechanics of face mask, and chin, same thing, component type, biomechanics. If you have a template like this, if you can remember this, you can easily reproduce any question which is asked from this. Cleft lip and palate. The 4th one is cleft lip and palate. Epidemiology and incidence, prenatal development of lip and palate, anatomy and function in cleft situations, growth in cleft palate, etiology and classification. You have to write about prenatal diagnosis, classification, team management protocols and timing of treatment, role of orthopedist, bone graft and orthodontic surgery, And you should also include about velopharyngeal function. Usually we ignore that because when you speak about velopharyngeal function, there are two entities you should know: velopharyngeal insufficiency and velopharyngeal incompetence. When a patient has got a velopharyngeal insufficiency, the prosthodontists play a role, and when a patient has got a velopharyngeal incompetence, it is the role of an orthodontist to improve function. So you don't think we are restricted only to the teeth and to the maxilla and mandible. Our role extends further. It's beyond orthodontics. The whole of the stomatognathing function, when there is a problem in the function, as an orthodontist, we have to play a role in that. Biology of tooth movement. Basic principles of tooth movement. Tooth movement, orthodontic tooth movement. Again, what is the role of periodontal? You know, the whole of orthodontic tooth movement is based on the principle that because we have a periodontal ligament. If there is no periodontal ligament, we cannot move a tooth. So periodontal ligament, you should know the structure, and then the theories of tooth movement, pathways of tooth movement, optimal orthodontic force, tissue response, stages of tooth movement, types of force, role of genes, root resorption and deleterious effect, of course, age factor in orthodontic tooth movement, effect of drugs, and you can add orthopedic force to this also. So this is in a nutshell about what you should know or how you have to write about biology of tooth movement. And after biology, it is about biomechanics of tooth movement. So under mechanics, you can, if you divide it into three headings, it becomes easy for you to understand the whole biomechanics, because biomechanics is one topic that is very difficult. And because I personally feel many students feel growth and development is difficult. I personally feel growth and development is easier when you can see things. We actually try to understand things what we don't see. Biomechanics is actually what we don't see. We only see the results. Whereas in growth and development, we see growth and we see development. If you can try to learn biomechanics, to me, growth and development is easier. Okay. Response of teeth to orthodontic force. When you are applying force, how does the tooth respond? So you have to write about force, center of resistance. Then if the force is not acting at the center of resistance, you have to write about moment of force, couples, moment of couple, center of rotation and moment of force ratio. And then prediction of force system generated by the orthodontic appliance. You need to write about static equilibrium, equal and opposite forces, couple or static system, couple, and predicting how teeth will move in response to the orthodontic appliance. You have to write about the different types of orthodontic movement. Biomechanics of face closure. If a question is asked like this, criteria for selection of mechanics, clinical prerequisites for when you are going to start face closure, what is the requirement? How should the case be? Then biomechanical requirements, and either you're going to use a sliding mechanics or a closing loop mechanics. Under sliding mechanics, how are you going to control the moment of force ratio? What is V-bend sliding mechanics? Canine retraction and V-bend mechanics? Friction issue in sliding mechanics? Variables affecting frictional resistance during tooth movement? Critical contact angle and resistance to sliding? En-masse sliding mechanics, advantages and disadvantages? And under closing loop, you should know all these things. Controlling the moment of force ratio with loop mechanics, and what are characteristics which are advantages by burst. Open, the difference between open and closed loop, Burschinger effect, which can be asked even during a viva, and then clinical significance of label bend and neutral position, alpha and beta moments, activation of closing loops, type of orthodontic loops, what are the different types of loops, and advantages and disadvantages of each loop. Yes, coming to orthognathic surgery. So first of all, you should know what are dentofacial deformities. Normally, we are under the impressions when we speak about orthognathic surgery, it is only the skeletal problems. Actually, the word dentofacial deformities includes even class 1 problems. So the terminology dentofacial deformity actually includes conditions or problems which cannot be treated orthodontic alone. It can be even class 1 malocclusion where the amount of problem is so huge that it cannot be treated by orthodontics alone. So the indications and contraindications of the orthognathic procedure, and you have to proceed with the diagnosis and treatment planning. You go for medical history, evaluation of the face. Evaluation of the face for an orthognathic surgery is different from, or it is entirely different from how we evaluate for an orthodontic treatment. Cephalometric evaluation, again, you rely more on your linear values, unlike your other routine orthodontics where we rely on angular values also. And of course, you should know your envelope of discrepancy. for a conventional orthodontic surgery, you have to do a pre-surgical orthodontic. And of course, even in some cases, even in some hello. हेलो
काम किया करो, थोड़ा सब दोस्त भूल जाओगे, अपनी प्लेट दो, खाने का जुगाड़ करो,
The
सब क्या
host,
निकला सुनो,
the host.
है ना, इसलिए जिंदगी कटेगी तब समझ में आएगा, अभी सब मिल कर रहे हैं।
Somebody else is speaking. Your meter. Yeah, can you? Yeah, having decided, somebody is speaking again.
I think host can mute everybody other than.
I think the host should do it. The host should mute everybody once and then unmute sir and the faculty, because some participant has forgotten to mute themselves.
Yes. Can I proceed?
Please do.
Yeah, yes, please go ahead. Everybody is muted.
Yeah, once you decide whether you're going conventional orthodontic surgery or SFO, so your next phase of planning comes. Then timing of orthodontic surgery, pre-surgical orthodontics and surgical treatment objectives, mock surgery, post-surgical stabilization, post-surgical orthodontics. I'm going a bit fast because I'm given only 40 minutes time. And of course, you should also know the surgical procedures, because when you take your patient to surgical department, we usually depend on them. We listen to what they say, but it is actually the orthodontist who has to tell the oral surgeon, this is what I want, this is what you should do. So unless you are familiar with the surgical procedure, you cannot dictate what to the oral surgeon what you need to, what are you need and you expect from them. Ortho intervention. So introduction and treatment sequence. So this is also important because your interdisciplinary, you have two important aspects, is periodontics and your endodontics. So introduction and treatment sequence in periodontal compromised patients. Basic periodontal therapy you have to do before orthodontic. See, if your periodontal status is infected or it is inflamed, it is not recommended to start an orthodontic treatment. There should not be any active infection. So if the active infection is controlled, you can start orthodontic treatment. And when you are starting orthodontic treatment, how is the biological event different from your conventional orthodontic treatment? Biomechanics. The center of resistance moves apically when you are treating a periodontally affected tooth. So you need to position the bracket accordingly, and also you need where the placement is easier. In orthodontic, you have to use what is called light forces or rheodontics. They have orthodontic treatment on the periodontium, and you should also understand that there are some periodontal surgeries to orthodontic tooth movements because it's like a symbiosis. And periodontal surgery improves orthodontic movement, and orthodontic also improves. You know, one of the important aspects of orthodontic treatment you should understand is when you speak to a periodontist, they always want the periodontium to grow or regeneration. So as an orthodontist, you have the power to regenerate periodontium, because when we move teeth, and along with that we also move the periodontium. So orthodontic movement can be used as a kind of periodontal re-engineering or regeneration, where we actually can produce a little bit of periodontal support. And of course, how is the anchorage different when compared to the conventional orthodontic treatment? And the retention part also should be there. As much as possible, you have to avoid banding. Bonding is recommended. And the pocket depth. The pocket depth is important. With the pocket depth, if it is 3 mm, probably you can start. If it is more than 3 to 4 mm, probably you have to do a root planing. And if after root planing, if the pocket depth does not improve, then you have to go in for a flap surgery. And again, the timing of treatment, if you are doing a flap surgery, you will have to wait at least 3 to 6 months before you start your orthodontic treatment. Now coming to the endodontic aspect. So response of pulse to orthodontic treatment. Normally what happens when there is tooth movement? All of us know there is change in the vascularity of the pulse and endodontic considerations in orthodontic treatment. So how will you treat an endodontically affected tooth when there is no periapical lesion? And how will you treat when there is periapical lesion which is managed with surgery, aseptic pulpal necrosis by dental trauma, and how long will you wait? The waiting time again, if it is a normal root canal treatment, normally they say 15 to 30 days, the infected cells are removed from that area of inflammation. So after a period of 30 days, you can start your orthodontic treatment provided patient has no other problem. But if the patient has got a periapical lesion, or if there are immobility, or if there is a trauma, there are some authors who are even up to 1 year waiting period to start the orthodontic treatment. So again, status of root option with root canal treatment, it's a controversial topic. You need to go through it. Orthodontics to aid in endodontic treatment. You can actually extrude the tooth and then increase the clinical confidence so that you can help the endodontist or a conservative dentist in preparing a crown. The effect of ongoing orthodontic treatment, the provision and outcome of orthodontic treatment. Evidence-based orthodontics. I saw one of the questions when during the previous lecture, somebody was asking what to write in evidence-based orthodontics. Here is the answer for this. When you write about evidence-based orthodontics, first you have to write about history of evidence-based orthodontics. It was Dr. Cochrane who was instrumental or fundamental in starting this whole evidence-based medicine, which later became evidence-based dentistry. And actually, we are, as an orthodontist, we are late to join in this team of evidence-based treatment. So you should know about Professor Archibald Lemon Cochrane, and also this Cochrane collaboration symbol, what you see here. The outer blue actually represents the Cochrane collaboration, and the inner circle represents the whole medical or world medical fraternity which are involved. And you see a Fox plot diagram there that actually represents the first documented evidence-based study which was carried out to find out the efficacy of corticosteroids during pregnancy. So that is what this Fox plot, and you will see a small diamond there which says that effect is good. So this is the explanation of the Cochrane collaboration symbol. So you have to write about the history and then evidence-based approach, the application of evidence-based approach in dentistry, which is followed by orthodontics, and how there is Cochrane oral health group and collaboration, and making rational decisions. You have to know about the evidence, levels of evidence, which was given by the previous speaker, and some of the important evidence-based orthodontic problems which has been discussed in the literature is the treatment of class 2 malocclusion. Have we the evidence to make decisions? External root resorption and orthodontic treatment, assessment of the evidence, malocclusion, orthodontic treatment and periodontal health, stability of anterior open bite correction, orthodontics and TMJ disorders, self-ligation, prevention of demineralization. Okay, so these are the important evidence-based topics which are under discussion now in the field of orthodontics. Now, sleep apnea. Obstructive sleep apnea, you should know the definition and classification, prevalence, pathogenesis, etiology, all these general factors, anatomical factors, mechanical factors, neuromuscular factors, symptoms, diagnostic methods, treatment of adult obstructive sleep apnea syndrome, where you have all these methods of behavioral modification, surgical treatment, use of nasal continuous CPAP, or use of oral appliance, and what are the types of oral appliance. Your next slide will give you the types of oral appliances which are used in treatment of obstructive sleep apnea. So when you are treating that, you should also know the side effects of oral appliance therapy, efficacy and success of oral appliance therapy, intraoral appliance treatment guidelines for. Yesterday or day before, there was a question by one of the students who asked, can we give a functional appliance when the age or when they have crossed the growth spurt or CVMI 3 or 4? When you can use a functional appliance for treating your obstructive sleep apnea in an adult, I don't feel there is anything wrong in treating an adult patient or patient who has crossed CVMI 3 or 4 with your functional appliance. Anyhow, that's a controversial topic. I personally feel you can give. Implants. History, definition, overview of skeletal anchorage, ideal requirements, biomechanics, and definition. Of course, an implant is an artificial material implanted into the body which is to remain there either permanently or for an extended period. In the field of orthodontics, it is only for an extended period. We are going to remove it. Parts, material type, stability, surface, diameter, length, screw head, the transgingival collar, self-tapping or the self-drilling. You should know the difference. And what are the favorable locations, timing of loading, force magnitude, direction. You should also know the bone density, MISH, bone density classification, complications, failures, contraindications, removal, and of course, type and clinical application. High angle cases, how will you manage? Introduction, facial morphology. You differentiate into long face without open bite and long face with open bite. The validity of the diagnostic test, etiology, diagnosis, management of open bites, treatment techniques, and stability. And these are the management techniques which you can employ. And of course, the stability of the treatment is also very important. Managing class 3 malocclusions, introduction, characteristics, incidents, prevalence, types of class 3 malocclusions, reasons for early treatment of class 3. You should include your GTRVs. I have mentioned that also. Diagnosis, you have to include this GTRV, development of treatment, whether it's a pseudo class 3, whether you want an orthopedic change, treatment of maxillary deficiency or mandibular excess. What are the treatment principles? It has to be either dental compensation, skeletal maxillary protrusion, functional stab, or clockwise mandibular rotation or surgery. Your chin cup, actually, they say it does not control the growth, it only reorients. So it converts it into a clockwise mandibular rotation, whereby the severity is reduced. So the growth of the mandible is not actually controlled, it only redirects the growth. And of course, finally, the stability of the treatment, what you have achieved. So accelerated orthodontics. Again, a topic which is of a lot of discussion is there. So under this, there are so many theories of tooth movement. I would expect students to know about the biphasic theory. Because when you speak about the biphasic theory, so basically what happens in a tooth movement? There is resorption and there is deposition. So you call this as an anabolic phase and a catabolic phase. So catabolic phase, bone resorption takes place. So when you differentiate between the catabolic phase and an anabolic phase, it becomes easy for you to speak about the accelerating tooth movement, because all of us know the rate limiting factor in tooth movement is resorption, osteoclast. So what are the methods of accelerating tooth movement? How do we stimulate the osteoclast? So you have three different methods: biological approach, device assisted approach, surgical approach. This is one way of classifying. And of course, you have to end by including the clinical evidence for accelerated tooth movement. This is an easier method of classifying if you are following that biphasic tooth movement, stimulating the artificial pathway to increase the rate of tooth movement. You actually create an artery. It's like your immunity. You have different types of, now in the period of corona, you have to speak only about immunity. You know, there are two types of immunity. So directly inject, so that is like this, stimulating the artificial pathway to increase the rate of tooth movement. You give some chemical agents. It can be your prostaglandins, it can be your vitamin D3, it can be your steroids. So many drugs have been tried, and it can be also physical stimulation. There are methods wherein you stimulate the natural pathway to increase the rate of tooth movement, because you are not giving that directly, but you are inducing it, corticotomy, piezo-excision, micro. And among these things, I think micro separation is one which is widely used, and you can do it easily without the help of anybody else. An orthodontist himself can do this. Again, you have to conclude with the clinical evidence of accelerated tooth movement. Again, next is extraction and non-extraction debate. If a question is asked about this, you have to start, of course, with the great extraction debate, Angle case, and then who advocated extraction with the Tweed and Beck's philosophy. And you have to extend orthodontic extraction in perspective. What is the amount of extraction that has been carried out due to orthodontic treatment when compared to other problems? And if you're extracting and if you're not extracting, where are you going to place the teeth? So for that, now the concept, you have to follow the Walla lines. So instead of following the arch forms, if you're going to follow these Walla lines, it becomes easy for you to predict, okay, this is where I need to keep the teeth. If I'm going to extract, this teeth should be there. If I'm going to not extract, if you're going to move it beyond the Walla lines, it is not going to be stable. And the need for orthodontic extraction, if you want to make space within the saline to reduce the fullness, to assist in providing a stable result or pathological reason. And of course, you should know the effects of extraction, the effects of non-extraction, which means the plus and minus of extraction, the plus and minus of non-extraction, and from a patient perspective. When a patient is around 30 years, you should not, oh, why did I lose these two premolars or four premolars? I could have had this. So from a patient's perspective also, you should think about whether you have to extract or non-extract. And the current concept is, if you can improve the appearance of a patient without extraction, that is the accepted method of treatment. It's not that you should extract for all patients. If the appearance of the patient or the soft tissue paradigm, if the soft tissue is improving, or if you're not spoiling the soft tissue profile, if you can achieve your objectives without extraction, it can be carried out. Three-dimensional orthodontics. This is also an in thing now. Introduction, history, and principles. Yesterday, a question was asked about contour photography. You can say contour photography as all historical points which actually led to 3D dimensional orthodontics. What are the techniques to record the external craniofacial morphology? Outside of the face, what are the things to do? These are the invasive techniques and non-invasive techniques, and what to the internal morphology. CT, cone beam CT, micro CT, magnetic resonance imaging, and of course you have your intraoral scanners. Inside the mouth, use intraoral scanners, and 3D devices used in orthodontic laboratories. You have your 3D desktop scanners and 3D printing, and the applications of 3D in orthodontics. Number one is documentation of the dentition, where all those things which you are doing conventionally carried out with your 3-dimensional models, everything can be done. Documentation of the face and jaws, not many things. 20 applications of 3D in orthodontics. Facial smile and interrelated. So what are the things you will write for facial appearance? Components of facial appearance, important concepts, extractions in facial appearance, frontal and facial analysis, concepts of facial appearance, effect of time, smile. I think all of you will know about the types of smile and the characteristics and features of smile. And of course, your dental aesthetics. It's all about micro, macro, and aesthetics. Treatment. No, at the end of treatment, we always want our occlusion to be. So what are the occlusal treatment goals? Introduction, you have to write about the intercuspal goals or write about your angle 60s. What happens if you fail to achieve the 60s? And sometimes it may be because there is a Bolton discrepancy. So inter-arch tooth with discrepancy. What is the significance of Bolton's ratio? What will happen if you fail to achieve a proper Bolton ratio? And you should also include about your functional occlusion goals, which is given by your Roth, and see that is also achieved, and you write about that. And other anatomical goals relating to the functional, because the whole objective of orthodontic treatment is to achieve a class 1 occlusion with a class 1 profile with the condyles seated properly. So that is the whole objective of orthodontic treatment. Don't be under the impression the orthodontic treatment is restricted only to teeth or only to the jaws or only to the bones. So the whole objective is to achieve a class 1 occlusion, a class 1 profile, a class 1 skeletal base, and of course, the condyle seated in the proper position. So the other anatomical goals relating to the functional occlusion will be whether the condyles and articular disposition is proper, and of course you should know the benefits of class 1. Finishing in orthodontics, very, very important for the finalists. Again, when you keep for exams, case finished. So orthodontic finishing is described as an art composed of individual perceptions and small detailing. So if you can finish, this is what it differentiates from an ordinary or an average orthodontist to a good orthodontist. So it may enhance aesthetics and it can also improve the stability. What will you aim for? Art and art form compatibility, 6 keys to normal occlusion, peer assessment rating, and of course you should know the ABO criteria. So this is the ABO criteria. I'm not going to extend on that. And of course, how will you approach systematic approach to finishing? Intraoral, extraoral, radiographic, functional. So intraoral, when you are looking into it, look for intra-arch first order, second order, third order, curve of P and curve of Monson. Then you relate inter-arch, midline, Bolton discrepancy, extraoral, smile arch, insert. Again, you can always finish in class 2 molar relationship, but you cannot finish it in class 2 canine or class 2 incisor relationship, provided the molars are in full cusp class 2. You cannot finish it in an end-on relationship. A full cusp class 2 will be accepted, but the canines and the anterior should be in class 1 relationship. So radiographic assessment, panoramic radiographs to assess the root paralleling, and of course your final functional assessment of canine guidance, incisor guidance, and lateral expression. Retention and relax, introduction, definition, all those things. So this is what you should know about the retention. You should include about adjunctive retention and evidences on retention. Lasers. So introduction, definition, and expansion. There is a definition for normally when you're asked about definition, you give the expansion acronym. You know, laser is an acronym. So the definition is a laser is a device that can produce light by transforming electrical energy into an optical energy. And you should know about the properties of laser: monochromaticity, collimation, coherency, basic components of laser, laser delivery systems and emission modes, types of lasers, applications of lasers in orthodontics. And the last is your genetics. Not in this, but genetics can be asked in your paper 4 also. You should know about the background of genetics, genes, chromosomes, central dogma of genetics, where the DNA gets converted into an RNA, because the DNA is one which stores. It does not function. It replicates itself into an RNA, and it is RNA which performs the function, which is the central dogma of genetics. You should know what are genomics, functions of genes, types of genetic disease, modes of inheritance, and genetic control of growth, and of course your orthodontic implications. You can call it as 10 commandments of orthodontic implications, where the role of genetics plays a greater role. And with this, you have prepared the template. And with this, you should at least know 10 authors in each template. It's not very difficult. Even if you don't know exactly, if you write the author's name, I think nobody is going to find fault. You cannot say blunders. You cannot say Raymond Beck for genetics. So you have specific authors in each template so that you don't forget their name. If you write, it is easy. So you should know at least 10 authors and study recent articles pertaining to the topic. Introduction and conclusion. Whenever you write an exam, introduce something and then conclude about that. So this is the main part of this. And the day before the examination, it is only for preparing your body and mind. Don't study before the day of exam. It's only you prepare your body and mind how you're going to write the examination. So sleep to remember, remember to sleep. So with this, we finish the first part of your presentation. The next is during the examination, what will you do? First, you need to understand the question. Many times when we go to correct the papers, we find the answers either the student has written intentionally because he doesn't know the answer, or he has misunderstood the question. So first try to understand the question. So read the question carefully. Before you get started, make sure that you have read the essay question twice and that you understand what you need to do, because there are certain words or terminologies which you have to know. So you have to read the question carefully before you answer it. So let me describe certain terminologies, because describe, explain, analyze, or these are things what you normally get discussed. Describe. So this is a question. Describe the various deleterious effects of forces in orthodontic treatment. Describe the precautions to be taken to minimize these effects. Is there any difference between discuss and describe? Yes, discuss, this is more analytical. You usually begin by describing something and then present arguments for or against it. That is what is discussed. You may need to analyze the advantages or disadvantages of your subject. So when a question is asked about discuss, you need to write like this. Describe means list characteristics or traits of something. You may also need to summarize something such as an essay from the task. Describe the major events that led to the development of changes. So there is a difference between discuss and describe. Now compare and contrast. Compare the mechanism of bite opening of Beck's appliance to the pre-adjusted appliance. Compare and contrast. To me, I think you don't have to give actually compare and contrast, because when you say compare, it actually includes the differences also. If you just say compare and contrast, why the comparison is useful. That's important. Contrast, describe how two or more things are different or distinguish between them. And again, don't forget to explain why the contrast. When you are comparing, explain why it is useful. When you are contrasting, again you write why it is useful. Enumerate and discuss the contemporary. So what do you mean by enumerate? Just mention things one by one. Discuss, this is again more analytical. You usually begin, we have already finished this. Elucidate in detail about frictional mechanics. Elucidate means make something clear. That's it. So you have to make something clear about your frictional mechanics and add a note about the biomechanics of focus loop. Explain sectional mechanics. Why or how something happened, or justify your position on something. When the question is asked about explain, you have to explain why or how sectional mechanics functions, why or how or where it is used, and justify your position on something like that. So rationale is a set of reasons or a logical basis for a course of action or belief. Elaborate, involving many carefully arranged parts. So typically applicable in Beck's and Tippett, where you have different stages. Even in PA now you have different stages. So elaborate, involving many carefully arranged parts or details. Analyze, functional appliance as an introspective orthodontic treatment. To analyze, again, it's like explaining the what, where, who, when, why, and how. So include the pros and cons, strengths and weaknesses. Evaluate, prove, summarize. I have taken all these words because I saw these things in many questions in different universities. That's why I've tried to explain the meanings of all these terminologies. Define. Right. So when your question paper is given, ask questions if anything is unclear. You know, most of the universities, they accept if there is something wrong with a question, or if it is totally out of the context, you can always tell the invigilator there, they can speak to the university and the question can be changed. So if you keep quiet, it's not going to work out. So ask questions if anything. Don't ask answers. You can ask questions. So ask questions if anything is unclear. Framing once you now that you have framed your template, it becomes easy. If you have already framed your template, forming a response is very easy. So follow the instructions. Think about how you should structure. If you have taken time to prepare all those templates during your revision holidays, it becomes easy for you to write your examination. You don't have to think how you are going to write your examination. Template is there. It is easy for you to just go and those relevant facts and figures to include in your answer by rephrasing the essay question as a statement. Make sure that your answer has a clear point. Pay attention to your grammar and punctuation. Staying calm and focused. This is what important. If you don't know one question, go to the next question. It is preferable to write in the same order, but of course, don't write answer for a question for which you don't know the answer. So staying calm and focused is important. Take a deep breath if you get too anxious in your examination hall. Use your time wisely. This is important. Many times what we do is we keep on writing, forgetting that we have so many questions to write. So use your time wisely. So if you have 180 minutes for the 100 marks, divide like this. So time per mark, 180 by 100, 1.8 minutes. That's what is the time. So 25 marks question, 45 minutes. Don't write more than 45 minutes. So 2 essays, 90 minutes, done. So go on with your short. How much ever you write your essay questions, you're not going to get high marks. But if you write your short notes well, there is every possibility that you'll get more marks. So concentrate more on the short notes also. Paper 3, if you're getting 75 marks, same thing, 180 minutes, so 25 marks, so 60 minutes for each essay question. That's it, done. Paper 4, right. So write as quickly as you can and try to maintain the same handwriting till at the end and stay on topic, don't deviate. So in exam, there are few rules which you need to follow. Margins, fresh paper, serially if possible, points over that. Don't write paragraphs. If you write points, it's easy for the examiner to correct and give more marks also. And of course, readability. Avoid cursive handwriting because make sure your handwriting does not first the reader, make it clean and clear. Avoid roundabouts. Don't write unnecessary things. It's like your scientific writing. You avoid unnecessary terminologies, words, sentences, pictorial expression, flowchart use. Wherever possible, use flowcharts, quote references when you're writing special recommendations. Attempt all, don't leave anything. Very important. Even if you don't know write something, you will get at least 1 mark or 0.5 marks. And after the examination, of course, don't do postmortem. If you write your first paper, don't do postmortem because unfortunately, if you're not doing a first paper, it is going to affect your second paper. Just finish your exams, relax, go and study for the next exam. And if you finish your theory exams, forget about it and start focusing on your practical exams. When you go for Viva, of course, you should see through your papers because many times they ask questions in there. So I would like to conclude by saying this small story. You know, in South Africa, when there is this apartheid, I hope all of you know what is apartheid. The black individuals were discriminated by the white. So one black young boy who was working in a white house, he ran away from the house. So when he was running in the street, he saw one balloon vendor. So gas balloon vendor, he was sending balloons one by one. He saw one white balloon going up, and then he saw one red balloon going up. So this fellow became so curious and went to the balloon vendor and asked him, "Uncle, if you send a black balloon, will it reach the same height?" And this balloon vendor happened to be a good Samaritan. He took the boy very close to him and said, "It's not the external content which takes the balloon high. It is what is inside the balloon which takes it to the high." So irrespective of whether you are going for your exams or whether whatever you do, it is the knowledge which will take you high. So whether you are studying in college or in that particular college, if you are good in your subject, you are bound to reach greater heights. So how will you do that? You have to get into the orthodontic flow, which is the pleasure, delight, creativity, and process we attain when we are completely immersed in orthodontics, which means you should know what to do, knowing how to do, knowing how well you are doing it, knowing where to go, perceiving significant challenges, perceiving significant skills, and of course, being free from distractions. Being free from distractions is very important. And let me conclude by saying that The best education is not given to students, it's drawn out of them. Do not expect the teachers to teach everything, because when you people attend, how much ever webinars you attend, how much ever lectures you listen, you are not going to remember everything unless you study on your own. Probably this lecture, when I finish this lecture, you will remember 60 to 70% of what I spoke. Tomorrow you will remember 40%. After 1 week, you will remember 25%. After a month, you will remember, oh, must spoke something on webinar. That's it. So the best education is not given to students, it's drawn out of them. It is your responsibility to see that you study. Be positive and see yourself succeed in exams. Thank you.